On the beautiful early morning of July 24, 1915, the Eastland steamship was docked in the Chicago River near Clark Street Bridge, ready to take all the workers and their families to the Western Electric Company for the annual picnic in Michigan City. Everybody was looking forward to go to this picnic in Washington Park. I mean, it had everything. It had a merry-go-round, a roller coaster, a baseball park, a bathing beach, and it was like a vacation for most of them. Many people wanted to be the first one to arrive to the picnic, so they woke up extra early and came to do this line, and the first ship that was leaving that day was the Eastland. Now, as people went inside the boat, they were excited to take this trip, right? And they kind of wanted to say bye to their families and all their friends that were in the lines to get either in that boat or all the other 4 boats that were going to take them to the picnic area. So most people went all the way up to the decks, and a few people went below deck. But 11 minutes after the start boarding, they noticed that the ship was kind of leaning to one of the sides. So they stopped the boarding process and they scrambled all around, and they were trying to balance the boat, and they moved water from one ballast tank to another, which is at the bottom of the ship, to kind of help balance the boat. And 12 minutes after, they were able to make the boat straight. So at that moment, they start bringing more and more people, and by 7 a.m., the Eastland was completely full. And some people said that the max capacity was 2,500, while others says it was 2,570. No longer after they finished loading all the passengers, the ship started leaning again. And the crew members, they were frantic. They were moving the water against in the ballast tanks, and they were urging people to move around, and that eventually made the ship be stable and balanced. Once they decided that they were ready to leave, they turned the motors on, and they were about to move forward when the boat started to lean again. But this time, the boat leaned over so far that all the passengers and the furniture started sliding across the floor, and everybody panicked. By 7:30 in the morning, the Eastland just capsized. It kind of quickly rolled to the side, and it landed at the bottom of the river. And since the river was so shallow, only half of the ship was under the water. Everything was completely chaotic. You can imagine people were thrown from the ship to the water, some even jumped. Like hundreds of people were trying to float above the water, and they were trying to help their kids because they were little kids and their friends, and there were so many people around that they accidentally were pushing one another under the water. Now, some people were able to climb on the rail of the side that was up or through the portholes, and they were standing on the top of the side of the ship that was above the water, just waiting to be rescued. And nearby workers, they were amazing. They just jump in to help. So they kind of threw into the water anything that will help them stay afloat, like empty crates or pieces of wood to kind of help people from drowning. Now, it was even worse for the people who were below deck, because when the ship because it did it quickly, in less than 2 minutes it was down, all the furniture and the people kind of smashed against each other, and a lot of people got trapped, and they weren't able to escape when the water was coming in, and unfortunately they drowned. The ships that were around, of course, they also saw what happened, and they all wanted to help, so they will come and try to get people out of the water, and one of them kind of parked in a way where it was made like a bridge between the sunken sideways ship and the deck, so they can walk over. The people who were standing above, they can walk over to safety, while more people were pulled out of the water. Now, as they were saving people, they realized that there was people trapped because they could hear them screaming for help. And they have hired scuba divers, which back then, it was 1915, it was like kind of the old-fashioned metal helmets and the oxygen tube connected to kind of go rescue, but the process was very slow. So the workers around, they jumped into action, and they grabbed any tools that they had, and they actually started opening a hole on the side of the hull of the ship. But Captain Harry Penderson, he was trying to stop them. He was like, "What are you doing? You're damaging the boat." And he was preventing them from kind of opening the hole, and the police had to arrest him and take him away. Eventually, they were able to open the side of a hole, and they were able to rescue dozens of people, but unfortunately, a lot of people had lost their life. Once they have taken all the survivors that they could find, it was the task of recovering all the people who didn't make it. And in total, they found 844 people, which include 22 whole families that disappeared that horrible day. So what happened that day? Why did the Eastland capsize? And to explain it, let's go back to the beginning. It was built in 1902, and it didn't start actually selling until 1903. But throughout the years, it kind of has several owners, and everybody will make changes to the ship to kind of make it faster and more comfortable for the passengers. And in general, it did. It worked well. It sailed without any complications. However, it nearly capsized 3 times. In July 17, 1904, in August 5, 1906, and in July 1st, 1912. And every time that it nearly capsized, they will do any renovation to kind of fix the problem, including kind of reducing the amount of passengers that were allowed to board the ship to prevent this from happening again. Now, as the time passed by, the Eastland, of course, it needed some repairs, and one of them was the deck. The wood deck, with time, kind of wore off, and they needed to replace it. And what they decided to do is to pour concrete to make the deck out of concrete, which is very, very heavy. But also, the accident of the Titanic just happened, and now they were required to have more lifeboats and life jackets, and this made the Eastland very unstable and top heavy, and therefore easier to lean to one side or another. Now, the Eastland was capsized for 3 weeks in the Chicago River before they were able to finally right it. And once it was righted and moved, it was put to auction, and Captain Edward Ever, he decided that he wanted to use it for the U.S. Navy, so he bought it. It was eventually rebuilt as a gunboat for the U.S. Navy, and it was renamed the USS Wilmette, and it was actually used until 1945 when it was decommissioned, and it was demolished in 1947, 32 years after this horrible accident. And here's where the spooky begins. After the ship was righted, it was moved to another port, and then Captain Ewer, he kind of moved in to kind of assess the damage of the ship to see what it needed to be done. However, this ship looked like a ghost ship because a lot of the windows were broken, and it was all dirty and muddy from being under the river for 3 weeks. So just by itself, it was spooky enough. But then he said he could hear like people screaming and crying, and sometimes as if people were like running all over the place, or see shadowy figures from the corners of his eyes like moving all around. Needless to say, he was extremely happy when after 3 months he was released of his duties. Another area that is said to be haunted is the actual Chicago River where the accident happened. And today, it's more developed. It has shops, it has restaurants, it has a river walk, and 2 bridges, the Clark Street Bridge and LaSalle Street Bridge. And sometimes when people are either walking or dining or standing on the bridge, they look down into the water and they can see like a body floating or like a face that is lifeless, life popping out of the water. Now, there's other people who have seen like somebody like reaching up or splashing or waving, or hear like a scream or moaning, and then when they look into the water, it's completely calm. Some people even claim that they have called the police because they think that somebody is drowning, and when the police come to investigate, they cannot find anyone. Another area said to be haunted is the Ray Murdoch and Company warehouse, which still standing today since 1915, and it is the headquarters of the Encyclopedia of Britannica today. Now, back in 1915, when the accident happened, this building was used as the rescue and relief station. And what they would do is any victim that was like clinging to life, they would rush them to the first floor to get urgent treatment. And those who had died, they will bring them to the basement to kind of try to identify them. Today, people believe this building is haunted because while they're working or doing their own things, they have seen like shadowy figures in different hallways or hear people in empty rooms. They have heard footsteps or they seen like the lights flickering on and off, and they see like sometimes some of the doors like slowly open and quickly slamming shut. And they have also seen people in the elevator. Another building that was used back in 1915 was the 2nd Regiment Armory, and it was used as a central morgue, basically kind of holding all the bodies. Now this building doesn't exist anymore, and it was demolished and the Harpo studio was built. And here is where people claim some unusual activities happen. Like some of the employees claim that they hear like ghostly children playing in the hallway or laughing, and sometimes they can kind of hear like music from like the 1950s from absolutely nowhere, or they can hear like the clicking of glasses as if somebody's making a toast. They also say that they can hear a woman like crying or sobbing in one of the bathrooms, and when they went to investigate, there was no one in there. Or they can hear as if something big kind of cracked. Also, in the lobby staircase, they have heard as if hundreds of people are going up or down the stairs in the middle of the night. And the staff also claim to feel like cold spots or feeling a sense of dread or sadness or anger. But they also have a gray lady, and this is a ghost that supposedly floats around the hallways, and is said that she was actually caught in a security camera wearing like this long vintage dress and old-fashioned hat. Now the studio was eventually demolished and they made the McDonald's headquarters, and from this point on we haven't heard anything, but it makes you wonder if the McDonald's headquarters is haunted. I kind of feel like this accident could have been prevented, and I don't know if I'm right because I don't know anything. But if the boat kept leaning to one side or another, I don't understand why they stop and they say, you know, there's something wrong. Either we have too many people or there's something wrong on the boat. But they just kept pushing. And I don't know if it was because the year before they kind of were late, and now they were trying to kind of make sure they were on time, that they kind of ignore all the warnings. But in my head, this could have been prevented, and especially because they were just like, oh my god, they haven't even left the port. It's like horrible. And also, I don't know why or how there's so many pictures of this day, and you can see them all and really be taken back to what it was. I mean, you can see the people being rescued, but also all the people who were dead, they were taken out, and it's so tragic, and you can see it in people's face. There's a picture of one of the firemen with a little baby that looks like 4 years old that is dead, and you can see the terror in his face, or when they're pulling men and women out, and they were all dressed up so beautiful, ready to have a day of fun. And I just feel like it's horrible. It's horrible when anyone died, but I feel like that accident maybe could have been prevented somehow in my head. I don't know if it's true or no. And I like always, I hope all these people found peace, and just knowing too that 22 families were completely banished. How horrible is that? One of the stories is that, you know, it took time for some people to be identified, and the last people to be identified was a 7-year-old boy, and they realized eventually his whole family died that day. That's why nobody was coming forward to kind of claim him. How horrible is that? Anyhow, the town had funeral after funeral for days, and imagine having to dig 844 like graves. And what I read is that back then it will take 2 people to dig one grave 4 hours, so they had to hire so many people to kind of make this graves. And it was like constantly one funeral after another. Now, if you want to see all the pictures of that day, there's a lot of pictures. It's incredible. You can go to the Eastland Disaster Historical Society website, and today there's a little historical marker in the LaSalle Street Bridge across the Red Murdoch Center to kind of commemorate those who died that day and remember this tragic accident. As for these places being haunted, well, we never actually know, but this was a very tragic event, so there is possibility that the river still has some lingering spirits, and we always hope it's not the case. The new McDonald's headquarters, well, we haven't heard anything, so if you work there, let us know if there's any spooky stories from that building. The Red Murdoch Center, which is the Britannica Encyclopedia headquarters now, it's a very old building, so maybe it is haunted. Now, do you have any ghost stories, urban legends, or paranormal encounters that you would like to share with us? Please send it to us at Ivonneplusone@gmail.com. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for being my plus one, and we'll see you next time.